friends, will you pray with me? And as you feel so comfortable and familiar, I invite you to join in the second time through. Let the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in thy sight, O God. Let the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in thy sight, O God. Amen. I'm just going to fix this. Crooked. Make the crooked ways straight, right? That's what we're doing today. We are here the second Sunday of Advent, already marking our halfway point through our Advent journeys. How many of you, that sounds a little bit panicky? Yes, indeed, it is. We are here, we heard a little bit of John the Baptist. For those of you who were here last week, we knew this was coming. This is the second week of Advent, is sort of John the Baptist Sunday, when we get a little taste of the one who was preparing the way, John out in the wilderness. This is a little gentle, he's, camel hair and locusts and honey. Some other versions in the gospel, he's calling people a brood of vipers. It's a little bit harder to preach in the Advent season. But here we are, and this is the very first words of the gospel according to Mark. The beginning of the good news of Jesus, who is the Christ. Some versions also say the Son of God. And what's interesting about that proclamation, a couple things. First of all, by saying here at the beginning, he's hearkening back to the beginning of the Bible, right? Genesis, in the beginning. So here's the beginning. What is also interesting about this is Mark very much wants to set up a contrast. He is, again, as we heard last week, this is written right about the time or just after the Romans have quashed a rebellion by the Jews. They have completely destroyed the temple. So this is where Mark is writing out of. It was a practice at the time. This, we know that the evangelium, where we get the word evangelism, right, the sharing of the good news. The evangelium was a proclamation that the Romans also did. It was the good news. They would stand in at the steps in the center of town and say, "Here's the good news, that we have quashed this rebellion of these people, or that we have overcome these people over here. Here is the good news of Caesar." And Mark is saying, here is the good news of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. And that reference is also one that was used by the Romans for the Roman Emperor, the Son of God. Very much setting up this contrast. And where does he begin? Out in the wilderness with this prophet. Hearkening back to the prophet Isaiah, really connecting into this tradition from which these people were known really well, these words, a voice crying out in the wilderness, preparing the way. And in this way, we are preparing our way, smoothing out the way of Advent towards Christmas. But in our tradition, this is also the Sunday of peace. Now, the words that go with the candles are not set in stone. And there is conversation and disagreement every year about what order they're supposed to be in, which ones you include, there's peace at the end, in the middle, who does what, pink is always third. It's supposed to be joy, we'll talk about that next week. Some people have switched it to love, but anyway. Pink is always third. But this is the one we are marking as the Sunday of peace. And so even in all my sort of studying of these texts this week, and like, oh, that's really interesting about Mark, and oh, there's some, all this stuff in John the Baptist. It's Isaiah that has stuck with me. And that hymn we sang that has been running through my head. Comfort, comfort, oh my people. I was writing recently, sort of just trying to get out my thoughts, and I'm like, I do not know what I'm supposed to preach this week. What am I to say about peace? Boy, do I wish I could stand up here and say, this is how we do it, folks. This is what we do. Because there's not good news when you turn on. Look on your news feed, you're scrolling through on your television or in your newspaper or however you get your news these days. The line that has come out is Christmas is canceled in Bethlehem this year. Thinking of this manger that we had set up for the journey. I'm thinking of the church in Bethlehem and all the people in Bethlehem and around that area, and not only just in that place, but in all the other places around the world that are just really needing the good news. The Ukraine, still going on. Sudan, although it's getting a little less press than other places. The UN peacekeepers are pulling out because it seems a little bit hopeless at the moment. Congo is an ongoing humanitarian crisis. Haiti as well. And on and on. I don't know how to speak comfort to those people. I don't know how to say, comfort, comfort, oh my people. It seems a little bit, privileged for us to want to speak it to ourselves to make us feel better. I had a moment, perhaps not my proudest parenting moment. This past week, we were having a hard day. I may have threatened to cancel Christmas. How many of you have done that? Moments. But then all the stress of everything else came out. It was there are children with no water. There are children with no health care. And while I don't want to take away our joy, it seems hard to be joyful, to be celebrating, to want that cheer when the wants and needs of so many others are so much more basic. To live in the place where they are, their homes. I don't have the magic words. I don't know that Isaiah, although he is speaking from a place of hope in a time and place of hardship himself, I'm not sure those words will provide enough comfort. But what struck me in the scripture we did read this morning, the epistle for this Sunday, is from 2 Peter, and it talks about God's time and how a day for God is like 1,000 years. Right? A day is 1,000 years in God's sight, and 1,000 years is like a day. And this sense of God's timing and God's promises, and that we may not see them in our short span of human lives, which I think is echoed a little bit in this Isaiah. The grass withers and fades, and sort of such is the span of human life, right? We may not see it, but that promise remains. And so hope paired along with peace someday we'll realize that peace will never be gained by war and violence. That somehow we're going to have to see each other as equal siblings, divine creatures, no matter what God we worship or don't, or what our skin color is, or what our nationality is, what border we happen to be born within or outside of. It will not be easy, but it will not be violent. I want to invite us into just a few moments of prayer. Prayer is a funny thing. It's hard for us sometimes to really understand what it is we're doing when we're praying. Are we asking God to change God's mind, to take some sort of action? Are we doing it for ourselves? Yes. Do we know how it exactly works? No. But I was moved a few years ago on a particular Sunday when there was a threat of a major incident, bombing, something in Syria. And there was this call for prayer. And so all around the world in churches, people pray for Syria. Even as all the governments and everybody was saying, this is happening, we're all preparing, this is what's going to go down. And it didn't happen. Not that Syria has continued to be a place of peace, but that, what they thought was going to happen, they were so certain, didn't happen. So I wonder if somehow we all gathered our hearts together and just offered our grief, our sorrow, our pain, our hope and desires for peace to prevail. This is the season of miracles, right? That's what we say. Maybe that can be the miracle of this season. So let's just take a few moments and pray for peace. May it be so. Amen.